Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to make these really adorable and fun earrings. I call them Gloria swag. I'm using 8mm aquamarine beads, but you could use, any beads. I have jade ones, I have kunzite, I have kyanite, and I might make more than one pair. Whoop, those are getting away. Come the end of this, but look how darling they are. We make these, they're kind of easy. They'll take a practice or two to get the swag part of it. But once you get them, I think you're really going to enjoy making them. You can make these with all of your favorite round beads. I'm using 8mm, but you could use 10mm. You could use pillow style beads. The difference here is that, you'd have to put a little upswing in the back to keep this bead from flipping around. The round beads don't do that, but the flat ones will. But look how cute they do. It's a real easy fix, to stabilize that, and then you'd have a different look. Alright, so I'll show you what kind of tools we need. After this video, hopefully you'll watch the next one where I'll show you a different variation, and we'll make something that looks more like this. So stick around. I'm obsessed with making these, and so I'm going to show you how to make a few of them. The basic tools you're going to need are a flush cutter. I really recommend that you have a nylon jaw and one that is, that has fairly new jaws. These are nice and flat. They're not all worn through. A round nose plier, and either a hardy flat plier or a chain nose plier. This one is nice to have because it's got a narrow point and, but still has a very hardy tooth on it that you could use the thicker side of it as well. If you have a small wooden dowel, I'll show you a trick to straightening out your round wires and getting them ready for this project. If you don't, then you can just use your fingers and rub them out, or use the nylon jaw and a metal plier. Hold the wire in one end and then just stroke down your wire to get the little lumps and warps out of the wire. Otherwise, if you have a tiny little rolling pin, maybe a little rolling pin. But anyway, we're going to start with 2 pieces of round, soft 18 gauge wire. These are cut to 6 inches long. In addition to that, we'll use 2 pieces of 20 gauge round, soft copper wire, and these are cut to 10 inches long. If your beads are a little bigger, maybe give yourself another inch. Alright, and then you can pick your favorite beads. And the very first thing you do is you make sure that the 18 gauge wires, the 18 gauge, can get through the hole of the beads you intend to use. So before you do anything else, this is the first thing you do. Pick your beads and then you say, does my 18 gauge wire go through these holes? And if the answer is yes, then you can use them for this project. If they don't fit through the 18 gauge, then choose different beads. Whoop. So I've checked all of these. These beautiful kyanite, I might use these. I don't know, I was going to use those aquamarines or the kunzite, but now I might use these. I don't know. I might do more than one. Okay, so I'm going to start by straightening out my 18 gauge wires. They're, again, cut to 6 inches long each. And I'll straighten them out by getting them just, fairly straight here with my fingers. Then I'll take my wooden rolling pin, and I'll keep one side of it with my hands and just use the pin, my wooden dowel, to roll out the wire like a spaghetti noodle. And then that not only gives you a beautifully straightened wire, but it also hardens it a little bit. So I'll do my other piece. Oh, and a Sharpie marker. You're going to need a little Sharpie marker. Alright, so I've straightened these out. And I've got two beautifully straightened 18 gauge wires, 6 inches long. I'll take my Sharpie marker and I'm just going to put them on my measure right here. This blue line is 12 inches, so this is 6 inches right here. And at exactly the middle, at 3 inches, I'm going to make a nice thick dark mark on both of them. And then at 1/4 of an inch, each of these hash marks are 1/4 of an inch. So I'll make 1/4 of an inch to the left and 1/4 of an inch to the right. Just some nice thick black lines so you can see them. The Sharpie marker comes off at the end by polishing, sanding, cleaning, or you use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and it'll get that permanent marker off for you. Okay, and then I'll straighten out my 20 gauge wires either by my fingers or doing the same thing, just using my wooden dowel. Spin it over. I only like to do a short distance at a time, otherwise the wire kind of flops around. Okay, and then I'll do my other one. Alright, and then I'll put these down. These are 10 inches each, and I'll put these on my measure, and I'll make a mark in the very middle at 5 inches. So right here. I'll just make a nice big thick mark at the middle of those wires. Okay, so the first thing we do with our beads then, I'm just going to set one on and then I'll do the other one so my bead's not rolling around. We'll take the 18 gauge wire, and put your bead on so that it's approximately at the middle right there. You'll take your 20 gauge wire, this is the tricky part, and you just want to be approximately 5 or so millimeter away from the line, and you'll be able to adjust this. Hold the cross of them, put your bead there. We're just going to try to form a U shape in this 20 gauge wire with this mark being at the bottom of your bead. So it's not that hard and it doesn't have to be super precise. Just hold on to everything and just wrap around so that you get a nice shape around the bottom of your bead, and so that your wires are fairly even, and that's pretty good. So now make sure you're in between your two marks and that your bead is pretty centered to those two marks. Hold the little circle, the curved part of the wire, all nestled together like that. And the first bend, I've got my thumb on the curve of the wire and I've got it right against the bead. And I'm just going to make a downward bend in the wire. 20 gauge wire is pretty soft, so you should be able to make that bend with your finger. And then just continue to hold the curve. While you bend the other wire down. So you've made kind of like a hook, and a little U shape around your bead. As you're working, you're going to try to keep your 18 gauge nice and straight. So the bead still shifts back and forth, and that's great. You can get yourself set up between your your two marks there. And here's where I'm going to grab either my flat nose plier, or in my case, my chain link plier, my chain nose plier, and I'll stay up against the 18 gauge and just give nice little taps and get closed around the 18 gauge. It's not super tight, but it's tight enough that it's close, what I call closed. The bead still slides around, and that's pretty good. You can make sure that you're centered before we really tighten them down. Okay, and now we'll do the same with this one. Just hold everything in place and give a nice gentle squeeze until that wire comes closed, and you look kind of like that. I always find it's a little bit easier to, every time we swing over to the opposite side, that you keep these two wires slightly slanting outward. Okay? So I'm going to hold everything, and the first move I'm going to make, and I'll just make sure this is a little bit straight. So I kind of want to be, that arc wants to be over the center of your bead, and your wires, fairly on the same plane right beside it. Okay? There's going to be about a 1 millimeter little gap there, and that'll be a bumpy spot that we'll have to keep managing throughout the whole project. You'll see as we go along. So anyway, get yourself set up like that. Make sure your bead is centered on your 18 gauge. And then the first move is I'm holding the bead real tight with these fingers here, and I'm taking the wire on the left and I'm passing across the front of this wire, and I'm going to try to just make a nice echo or mimic the arc that's already there. And I'll get right beside this wire and right beside the 18 gauge. I'll make sure that my gap between those two layers of curves is not too much, and I'll just gently fold my wire over. It's a little bit squirrely. Before I tighten that, I'm going to do the opposite side with the opposite wire. Hold everything. Make sure you're still in the center of your wire there, and just take this wire and curve around and come over the 18 gauge. Manage the 18 gauge and make sure it stays nice and straight. Once you get this close and right next to the opposite wire, hold the curve and make a bend around that bar. Now we can get our pliers and give a nice gentle controlled squeeze to tighten that up. Come to the opposite side. Might have to correct that wire and make sure that it comes right over the 18 gauge. If it goes out a little bit, just make sure it comes over nice and clean like that, just to the outside of the bend. So just like that. And now we'll just give a slight tug. Straighten your wire out if you need to, and get them slanted slightly outward. So now I'll go to this side, and I'll hold everything. I'll come above this wire and above the 18 gauge, and I'll just try to make this arc as nice and shaped as I can to the previous one. Change my camera a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay? I'll hold everything right there. I'll hold the curve so that it's as flat with the other ones as I can get it. And I'll just make a nice soft bend over the 18 gauge. Then I'll come to this opposite wire. Hold everything. Turn over all of them and come to the opposite side. Manage the 18 gauge and make sure that it stays as straight as you can get it. It's kind of like a crisscrossing of them, but they don't really crisscross more than they just kind of swag in front of each other. Just work patiently. You're always pressing them down and forward. Just get those two wires close, and then you can use your plier to help you. You're not killing it, but you're making it nice and tight. Just making sure I stay centered to my wire. And then this side, I'll make sure that the wire isn't slanted right there. I'll just put it in line with the other ones. Then I'll make sure it's nice and snug, that it's on the same plane. And that they're slanting out slightly. Okay. So now I'm going to come to this one, and I'll come back over this way. Just going to hold everything. You have to kind of arc the wire yourself, right? Create that curve. There's nothing for it to curve on, so you have to shape it as you come over. And you're coming right below the previous one. You're holding it. Take the bend and come to the, slight outside of the previous one. Then before you go real tight, get a hold of the other one. And you can move your frame around so that you're making this curve with whichever hand feels comfortable to you. And you don't have to go as many times as I'm going either. You could have stopped with the previous one, but I like to go so that there's 4 on each side. That gives a nice substantial earring. These are what I call more organic looking. In other words, that doesn't have to be all perfect. It's meant to kind of look like, folds of fabric. And since this is my last one, I'm going to squeeze it down a little bit tighter. Make sure that your 18 gauge stays as straight as you can get it through the bead. Then when you feel like you're comfortable with all that, we're going to make a 360 wrap around the 18 gauge 2 or 3 times, whichever you prefer, but you don't want it to pull anything else out of shape, so use your plier to help you. I've got it, all the wires kind of held nice and snug right there, and I'm just making nice turns around the 18 gauge, and then I'm using my plier to help me get tight around it so that I'm not putting a whole lot of pull on the wire. but I'm still getting nice tight wraps. And it didn't yank all that out of position. It originates here, so if you just crank on it, sometimes it pulls this out of shape. So just take your time, work patiently, use the tools to help you. And then I'm making 3 on each side, so I'll end it with it pointing to the back, and that looks pretty good. And I'll do the same with this side. I'll hold onto all of the wires there, and I'll use my plier to help me make 3 wraps around this 18 gauge. Let it all point to the back. And then I'm going to trim this off so that I have just about 1 millimeter hanging over, and that way when I tap it down, the cut will live in the back and it won't come back to the front to look at me. So just like that. And then on this side too, get a nice pinch down on that cut. And then look at the earring. Make small adjustments with your fingers. Sometimes, you know, the shoulders look like they're pulling down a little bit, and that's okay. Here's where you can either use your metal plier, brace right here and kind of tap right there, gently straighten it out. If you need to, you can do the opposite side, or make love taps to close those folds a little more evenly. And then if you have a nylon jaw, you can take a nice hearty pinch right there, get all of them in line at one big time. There you go, until it's beautiful. And that is. So now I like to set up both earrings. The back is the side where my cuts are facing. It sometimes gets hard to tell which is the front and which is the back, but just remember, you can always look for the face of your cuts. That's the back, right? And that's lovely. So now I'll make my other one, and it'll be done the exact same way. So alright, we just finished making our first earring set up here, and now I'll do my second one. I have my second kyanite 8mm bead with a hole big enough to take the 18 gauge wire, and I'm just going to straddle or thread the bead onto the wire, and I'll get into the approximate middle of my marks there. I'll take my 20 gauge wire that's cut to 10 inches long, and I'll just get this mark positioned right below my bead. Let me get my marks so that you can see them all. I'll hold the bead, hold the wire, and all I want to do is make a nice U shape. It doesn't matter if it stays in place right now, because we can always adjust. I'm just trying to show you how I do it. And putting the mark right below the bead, you know, gets me to the approximate center of my bend, which is pretty good. I'm only off by 1 millimeter or so. And I'll come back here and make sure that my bead's in the center of the wire, center of the 18 gauge. I'll hold on to everything. Hold on to that curve, put your fingers behind it so that you're kind of bracing it, and then just take the one side all the way down so you get kind of a U shape around your bead. Make sure that the 18 gauge stays nice and straight. Just work patiently. You could mark those 2 spaces with a Sharpie and make this hooking bend off of the wire and then put it back over the bead, but I find that's kind of almost harder to get accurate than just doing it like this. Once you do it a time or two, it won't be so fidgety. Okay, so then hold it all together in the center of your marks here so that you're at the approximate center of your wire. Use your plier and give a nice tap. Make sure the 18 gauge is straight. Make sure that the 20 gauge is right against the wire and you don't have any 18 gauge and you don't have any slack, and then pinch it down. So it might look like that. You just control it. You can hold it right there, straighten the wire, get it all back on the same plane, as I like to say. Okay, so that it's all nice and straight like that. And they both have a slight outward bend. Okay. I'm in the center of my 18 gauge. I'm holding on to the bead, and I'll just start with the left-hand side one. I'm just going to trace the previous curve and come above the opposite wire and above the 18 gauge. So I'm crossing in the front. Just work patiently. When you get a nice arc that's about the same, just to the outside of the previous one, hold on to it and just bend right over that wire and kind of to the outside, and we'll make it closer in a minute. Take the opposite wire and do the same thing. Get it nice and close. Hold on to that curve. And then take a bend right over the bar. Okay, and now we can use our plier to help us get a little closer. Keep it, put your finger here so that you're holding the extended wire so it doesn't actually loop around when you squeeze this closed. Okay, and then come do the same for this side. Just hold on to the extended wire. Stay close to the 18 gauge and then squeeze down. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, now we'll go to the left side and just repeat. Come around. Come right next to the other one. Try to bow the wire in such a way that you get a nice shape that looks like it's flowing with the rest of them. When you get it, just hold on to all those curves. Bend over the 18 gauge and slightly to the outside. And then get the other one. Hold on to the bead and the wire. Just make a nice gentle curve. Come over the 18 gauge. It's like you're making rainbows. There you go. Just get set up next to the other one. Hold on to everything. Take a nice deep bend. Now get your plier. So that wire's slightly curved up, so I'm going to correct it. And I can squeeze it closed right next to the other one. That looks pretty good. Alright, so this time I'll start with this one. Just hold on to everything. Curve around. Come up. Get right next to the previous wire. Get your curve right next to the previous one and take a bend over the 18 gauge. And then just repeat with the opposite wire. Hold on to it. Take a nice elegant curve around all the other curves. Get lined up. Hold on to the curves and then take a nice bend, close bend over the 18 gauge. Beautiful. Like I said, it might take a little practice, but you'll get it. The trick is actually not to pull anything, but to make deliberate bends over these shoulders. So I'll go ahead and squeeze everything tight. And then I'll hold onto these curves. And I'll take the end of this wire and I'll make 3 single wraps around the 18 gauge. 20 gauge is hard to wrap, so I use my plier. It puts less stress on the design. Have it pointed to the back. Then I'll do the same with this side. And if your coils are, we can make them a little closer together at the end here too, so I'll show you how to do that. Don't stress. Just make sure they're not too far apart. So if you need to, you can take the edge here, the soft curvy edge, and just give a little squish. Put them together a little bit. And then take your wire over. And I'm holding everything so nothing shifts too much. Point it all to the back. Take my cutter, make a nice close cut, make sure to catch your fragment. Leave yourself just about 1 millimeter so that you can turn it over and have it live in the back. Okay, beautiful. Just get control of your 18 gauge, make sure it stays nice and straight. I think that they look magnificent. I love this design so much, and I love making it. It just takes a little patience. Alright, so now get your, you can get your nylon jaw if you have it, and just give gentle love taps if you need to. Along the shoulders here, and then also along your curves. Just gentle love taps. You don't need to kill anything. Kind of get them all lined up and swaying with each other nicely. Alright. And again, this is a more organic look, so they don't have to be super perfect, right? These are beautifully handmade earrings. I like to sometimes too, if if you can stretch this far with your plier, be real careful, or you can brace up against your bead if you don't think it's delicate, and you can give a slight squeeze and bring these coils a little closer together. So I'll show you that again, only if you need to. I brace this tooth up against the edge of my bead. You can ruin things doing this too, and you can certainly break your bead, so be careful. That's only if you need to. That's pretty good. And this side doesn't need it. If you have some that are poking up, if it bothers you, you can just tap them down by putting one plier tooth underneath and then tapping gently with the other one. Show you that this way and see if you can see it. So just kind of like that. And then pinch them tight right there. For me, it doesn't bother me so much, but I'm showing you because for some of you it might bother you. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'll just do a little correcting bend on that one too. Just clean them up and make them as neat as you can so that they're going to be beautiful either way. Then if you leave little marks, you can just do some sanding right there on the shoulders. Okay, those are pretty good. So now I'm just going to compare them and just to make sure that they're fairly even in size, and they are pretty consistent. So I'll make sure that my extending wires that are coming out, the 18 gauge here, are fairly straight. And then I'll take a measure. It'll just be approximate. It'll be easier for you to go upside down, but we're basically going to measure about 3/4 of an inch to an inch out. So I'll just put this down right here. The edge of the last wrap is, and then I'll come out 1 inch and make a mark. And then I'll make a mark at approximately 1/4 of an inch, and I'll do the same with this side. Just get your last wrap to the edge of a line, mark out 1 inch, and then mark 1/4 of an inch back. And do both the earrings. So here's 1 inch and 1/4 inch back. Align this side. Here's 1 inch and 1/4 inch back. This is just to help your eyeball a little bit when we cross them over. Alright, so from here, remember which is the back side where your cuts are. So from here, I'm going to take my flat or chain nose plier, get right to the edge of these wraps, and I'm going to make a straight bend, 90-degree bend straight up. Okay, do the same with this side. And then you're going to cross these over the center, stay center to your bead, and cross these until they make a triangle. So you can just use your fingers. And if you want a taller one, then you can go with the 1 inch. If you want it a little bit smaller, you can cross them until you get to the 1/4 inch mark in between, or somewhere in between the two of them. And then tap right here with the wide flat part of your pliers to keep them straight, because as you make the bend deeper, they're going to want to curve out right here. And just take them with your plier and cross. If your wire curves, you can just tap it with your flat nose and cross it, and then decide what size you want your earring. I think I'm going to go to the smaller ones right there, and that cross should be center, you know, approximate. Just eyeball the center of your bead. Okay, and then do the other earring. If you need to tap these a little bit, you can, to get them straight, but also to get them sharp here at the corners. That's pretty good. Okay. this is the front of my earring, and this one is going, the right hand side wire is going on top. So to make the mirror, when I cross these two, here's the front of my earring, there's the back of my earrings with the marks. When I cross them, I'm going to make sure that the left one is on top. That's all you got to do to get mirrored earrings with these. So I'm looking at the front, or you can look at the back now that you've got an understanding of what we're doing, and you can just turn these up, make nice sharp 90-degree turns, and then continue the bend. Oop. And this time the left hand side of my wire needs to be on top, and I'll just turn to the back so that I can see my marks. And I'll just keep bending until they cross where I want them to. Then I'll tap them right here and right here to make them sharp. And continue to bend until I get them crossed approximately where I want them. So I'm going to look now to the front of both of them, and you can see that my left wire is crossing in front, my right wire is crossing in front. So I have mirrored earrings set up now, and you just want to make sure that they're the approximate same size. Our marks and lining them up should have made them the approximate same size, but you can also just hold them next to each other. Take a glance. So that's why those marks, they help you just make that triangle the approximate same size. I'm looking at the backs of them right now. Okay, so to do a little design on the top and to give ourselves the loop, let's look at the front of the earring. Remember that the cuts are the backs. So looking at the front, I have a wire on top and a wire on the bottom on both of them that are opposite each other. And I'm going to take the wire from the bottom. I'm going to hold it right here where they crisscross. And without moving the opposite wire, I'm just going to bend the wire underneath up and over and back onto itself. Just like that. Just a hairpin turn. And when I get it close, I'll hold on to the wire, the extended wire, get my plier on it sideways so you don't make any nicks. Whoop. And just try to close down tightly right there where it crosses the other wire. And I can tell I did a pretty good job because my marks are still in line. Okay? When you feel really confident, go ahead and give a really hard squeeze, almost as if to dent the wire a little bit. Don't squeeze so hard you sever the wire, but get a nice pinch on it. And then this will be our design wire. With the opposite wire, you can either use it for additional design, or you can bring it into a loop and then just get rid of the rest of it. These are similar to the sub rosa earrings, the top of those sub rosa spikes, how we crossed it over and took the second wire down and weaved it a little bit. You could do the same, right? So before I continue, I'll work the opposite earring, making sure that I'm looking at the front, making sure that my marks are still crossed and nothing moved. I'll hold on to the bottom wire, take a 90-degree bend up, soft bend up and over itself without moving the opposite wire. Double check your marks. That's pretty good, nothing's moving. Just bring it back down on itself. Hold on to the leading wire and give a nice closing squeeze. And this wire should just be sloping right off of your triangle, just like that. And these are real versatile, right? You could do all kinds of different designs on the inside of these. And if you want to check for size, you can just hold them above each other and see that they're nothing shifted in size. But your marks should tell you that as well. Okay? So from here, first of all, I want to cut these two, so the two that are sloping down the triangles, I want to make those a little bit shorter. And to get them the same, I'm just going to align them at the top here, you know, get them even right there. If you have to adjust these two wires a little bit to get them lined up, you can do that. It doesn't have to be perfect, just get them close. That's pretty good. And then just take a snip down here. So they're about even. And I would say, let's see, that is 1 1/4 of an inch approximately. You can go shorter, you can go longer, whichever. Make sure that we're always looking at the front of the earring. We can tell that because our cuts face the back. And we'll take these wires, maybe I'll make it a little shorter, but we'll see. And we're going to turn a nice cute spiral into the center. So we'll use our round nose plier. Use your finger as a landing pad here. Grip on it. Hold steady. Just make a nice turn. Let me get a little closer here again. And just keep turning a nice beautiful spiral. Into the center of the earring and right above your bead. Just use your fingers, make it flat. Very pretty. If you munchie the tip a little bit, if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that that's the sacrificial bit. So I just take my plier, a very finely tipped plier, and snip out the very, very 1 millimeter that I munched, and then you have a nice clean spiral. Right? So let's do the other one. Get a round nose plier on it. You can use your finger as a little landing pad to help you shape your spiral as you go. I try to reposition to keep holding on to that tip because I know I'm going to cut it off anyway. Just get a nice spiral, best that you can, into the center of the earring and above the bead. And then if you munchie the little tip, get your cutter in there, just snip it out. Use your fingers and you can flatten all that so it's laying nice and flat with the earring. Then we just hold them up to each other and compare a little bit, see if they're fairly similar, and that's good enough for me. I feel like that's quite similar. And now we'll end this last wire. And again, like I said, in the Sub Rosa spikes, you can use this additional length for some design if you want to. I like to take my plier and just tap everything after all that and make sure that things are nice and tight. I'm not killing it. I'm not making marks. I'm just giving love taps to straighten things out. Okay. And now we'll take a round nose plier. Position it right here, but give yourself about a couple of millimeters away from this wire. So I'm just above the tip of the earring. And I'm about 2 millimeters into my plier. So I'll take it around, I'll form the loop using the plier head. Let the plier head make the loop for you. Just push the wire around it and pass along the back side. I'm going to reposition by moving my plier out and then back in so I have better leverage on this as I turn it. And I'll come right along the back side, just like that. You can use either your metal plier or your nylon jaw. Give that a nice tap, make it go forward. And then again, you have this bit of wire that you can do some more design with. And I'm going to get my other one, my other earring done, but I'm going to make a little correcting bend on that and center my loop a little bit. Okay. Now I'll repeat with this side. Hold about 2 or 3 millimeters into your plier. Try to stay at the same depth so you have the same size loop, and hold the wire about 1 or 2 millimeters right above the tip of the earring. Form the wire, just push it all the way around the plier head. You can switch teeth and just give a little turn and snuggle it in there for a nice beautiful loop. And then you can either use your nylon jaw, which I did last time, or you can use your metal plier. Give some taps and just let that wire fall along the side of the earring. And that's pretty good there. So now we have this additional little length that you can make some more design with if you choose to, and if not, you can cut it off right back there and just leave, this is 18 gauge wire, so try to cut it off so that it lands right at the inside of the opposite side. So I would cut it right there, and then it just looks like a nice closed, clean loop. Okay? If you take it around one more time, it might get a little bulky up there, so I like to just cut it, bring them together, and leave it. And it looks real cute and clean. Otherwise, use the other little bit for design. And again, I want to make sure they're the same length. So I'll hold them together. And I'll just take a snip to about the edge of the earring. It's about an inch that I've left. And again, make sure that you're looking at the front of both earrings. And I'll take this little bit and just do another little curl. But I think if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to tighten this one up a little bit. So I'll get my round nose back on it. And I just, did a little more bend and brought it a little higher into the earring. Just like that. That gives me room to swing this one. There's not much here, so it's going to be tough. Just make a tiny little back curve in it. Take your round nose plier, swing it all the way to the right so that it's kind of a soft curve like that. The bead is there, so be careful not to scratch your beautiful bead. Then get it at its tip and turn an opposite curve real tight. It's going to be tough, and it gives you this little bit to the side. That might be too tough to do, you guys. And I'll take my plier This is a chain nose, and I'll just shape it so that it sits in there a little bit. And if you love that, you can keep it. If you don't, again, we can just snip it off at the top up there. So I'm going to keep it for now. And again, if you overturned this tip, or if you munched it up because that was a tough, tight turn, just get your cutter in there and take a small snip, and then it opens it up a little bit and makes it real cute. Okay. You can use your nylon jaw, give a nice tap to make sure everything's on the same plane and inside the earring. Tap the shoulders here again, straighten them out. Give nice, firm but loving taps to all that, all your curves. Give nice hardening taps to the shoulders. Okay. And then if your loop needs any adjustment, because we just did all that, you can do a little correcting bend on the loop as well and recenter it. Super cute. Now I'll do this one. Alright, so now I'll just repeat with this one. Just going to deepen this spiral a little bit and bring it a little higher into the tip of the earring to open up some space. I'll take this bit of wire and just curve it into the earring. And then I'll do a very sharp and small back turn with it. It's very tight and might be difficult for some of us to do, so this is optional. Take my chain nose, and I'll just push it back a little bit, shape it a little bit more. It's pretty cute. I'm going to compare it to my other earring and see if any adjustments need to be done or if they're pretty similar. And I feel like they're pretty similar, so that's good. If you don't want that additional bit, so that's how, one idea that you can do if you want to, I think I'm going to remove it. I like just the single spiral inside the earring. So if you're not going to do that, or you decide like me that you don't want it, you'll cut the wire off right here at the base of the loop. So just to make sure that I get a nice clean cut, I'm going to move that little bit up. Anyway, I'm going to make sure I've got the loop that I want, and right here, without cutting any other wire, and you could even lift this a little bit to make sure you don't cut any other wire, I'm going to trim it right here at the edge so that when I put it back down flat, I'm going to be just to the inside of that space, so it'll close right there. It'll be nice and discreet. Just shape that until it's top center and lovely, and then you can take your nylon jaw and go back through your earring for those hardening taps if necessary, to make sure that everything's laying on the same plane. And that's a beautiful earring. So I'll do the same with this one. Just going to scooch this wire to the back to make sure that I have some leverage up here. You could mark the space with your Sharpie marker if you don't think you can eyeball it before you cut it, so it would be right there. And then get a real sharp cutter. Make sure you're right there where you can visibly see it and you're not just cutting blind. Make a very precise cut. And then just tap it down so that it meets the other half of the wire and gives you a beautiful, nice closure. Right? I dented my wire right here, so I got a little bit of sanding to do right there, but that's no big deal. That happens to you, you can sand it out, or you can always put coils or decorative bead balls in there, whatever you want to do. I dented my wire showing you that little example of bringing more design down. I squoze a little hard, but that's okay. It happens. Nothing a little sanding won't take care of. Like I said, worst case, if you make a dent in your wire and you can't sand it out, you can always put some decorative coils or tie a bead ball on right there. A little copper bead ball would be really cute, or just sand it. It won't even be noticeable. Alright, so there we go. We have two gorgeous, gorgeous Gloria earrings, Gloria swag earrings. And now I'll put my earring hooks on them. So for these, I'm just going to use some pre-made hooks. In some of my other earring tutorials, I show us how to make these little French hooks, but they're also very easy to and very convenient if you can buy them. Make sure that you're seeing the back of your earring, which is where the cuts are. Put that into the loop so that the front of the earring is facing out. And then just close it up. So cute. I'm very excited about these. And I hope you enjoyed this little technique of making swag or swag on the earring. I'm going to use it for a couple of other designs because I love it and I'm a little bit obsessed. So I'm going to make a bunch of earrings. But here are these beautiful kyanite earrings. You can throw them into your tumbler, or you can do some, and it'll clean and harden the wire further and polish it up, or you can do the sanding and polishing by hand and then just put them on your ears and enjoy them. You can patina these as well, or you can just leave them bare copper. I think the look is beautiful in bare copper when it's cleaned up. Alright, you guys, I hope you love that, and I hope you'll be back to do some more earrings with me. I've got another great design using this technique that I'm about to show you in the next video. So much love. Thanks again, and if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure to hit your subscription and notification bell so that you'll always be aware of when I put out new tutorials for us. Alright, thanks again. We'll see you for the next one. Bye.